Welcome. Let's talk about negotiations. I'm Christina Wynn, and I'm the CEO and founder of Dream Job Pursuit, where we help professionals find their dream jobs through job hunting techniques, resume reviews, mock interviews, and of course, negotiations. I'm also a marketing consultant, and I've spent years running the marketing teams at startups. So I can attest what it's like to be on the inside of a company and you're negotiating with vendors, job candidates, and of course, when I've been on the other side as a job candidate myself and negotiating the everyday things in life. So let's get started with negotiation tips. Get what you're worth. For today, we're going to speak about four things. First, we'll talk about negotiation myths and what negotiation really is. We'll discuss what can you negotiate and give some examples, my top 5 tips, and we'll leave with some resources that you can use as you go on your negotiating journey. Let's talk about some negotiating tips. Myth number 1, negotiating is a zero-sum game. First off, this is not true. Sometimes there are situations when we think, oh, they have something, I want it, it's going to be either they get it or I get it, and it's a zero-sum game. But with negotiations, that isn't always the case. For example, you can create value through a negotiation to create something that is mutually beneficial for you and the other party. For example, let's say there's one apple. They want the apple, I want the apple. Oftentimes we think, well, only one person get the apple, or maybe we'll split the difference and we'll split the apple in half. When in actuality, maybe I want the apple and they just want a piece of fruit in general. So I can offer them an orange that I have, bring that in, they get the orange, I get my apple, and both parties are better off than before. So it's not always true that when it comes to negotiating, your gain is their loss. Maybe you can create value in some specific way. Myth number 2, I'm not good at negotiating. So if you think this, you're not alone. About 40% of all adults in the US don't feel confident in their negotiating skills. But this is a complete myth. When it comes to negotiating, it's a skill set. It's something you practice time and time again, and it's something that you can get good at and comfortable with. So if you think you're not good at negotiating, that is a myth. Myth number 3, always let them make the first offer. Now, sometimes this can be true, especially when you're going into an environment where you don't know what something is costing. However, we're going to prep that as we go into negotiation tips with some preparation. However, sometimes it's better if you make the first offer. We'll talk about this more in negotiation tips, but oftentimes when you set the first offer, that's what we call anchoring, and then the negotiation revolves around that first offer. So sometimes it's good to make the first offer. Sometimes it's not. We'll go through that more in the tips. Now, when we look at negotiation, there's a whole slew of things that we can negotiate. Quite often when we hear negotiation, we think it's about job compensation, right? So what is that base salary that you can get? But there are a lot of benefits beyond base salary, bonuses, and cash. Maybe there's things like vacation time. In this world of remote work, maybe you're looking for a hybrid, or maybe you're working for 100% remote. There's a whole host of things you can negotiate around a job offer. But in the everyday life, let's look at things like internet. Maybe you have a bill from Spectrum and then they want to increase it after that yearly offer. You can call them and actually negotiate your Spectrum bill and then say, I've been a really good internet customer. Can we keep the same rate that I've had since I've first started? They want to keep you as a customer. They know you're a good paying customer. They might be flexible and actually match that previous rate that you had. Credit cards is a big one that I always encourage people to negotiate. Oftentimes, credit cards will have annual fees. They'll give you an intro offer, like $0 for the first year, and then after that, it's $99. However, I've been in situations where I've called them and I've said, hey, would you waive my annual fee for another year? And then sometimes they'll waive it right on the spot. Other times they've offered me a statement credit where they say, okay, as long as you use your credit card within the next month, we'll give you that $99 back as a credit statement. Boom. Another thing that people don't think about negotiating is financial aid. Yes, you can negotiate financial aid packages at colleges. I had one client, her daughter was looking at UCLA and rival school USC. UCLA gave a financial aid package. Then she went to USC, which was the school that she wanted to go to. And then she said, hey, UCLA is offering this much and USC, would you be able to match that? USC ended up giving her daughter $10,000 more in financial aid as a grant. So yes, you can absolutely negotiate financial aid. And I've seen friends and family do this at schools, for say example, grad degrees, where one university gave them a scholarship and they said, hey, I would really love to go here. Is there any more scholarship funds that you have? Otherwise, it will make it difficult for me to come here. And my friend, she doubled her scholarship offer by doing this. So highly, highly encourage you. Just go ahead and ask. There's no harm in asking. Another thing you can negotiate is housing and rents. Now, this is a tricky one, particularly if you live in high rent areas like mine. I'm here in Los Angeles. Typically, if you find an apartment, you often want to jump on that apartment because somebody else is going to take it. However, you can have some leeway with this. For example, think about yourself. Maybe there is a $2,000 apartment that you want, but that's a little out of your price range, but it's your dream apartment. And you were really looking for the more $1,700 to $1,800 a month range. So you can actually go and tell them, you know what, I really love this apartment. I'm ready to pay a deposit today. However, do you think you could do it at 1,800? If so, I'll pay for today. If they say yes, you've just gotten your dream apartment for $1,800 a month instead of $2,000. If they say no, no worries, because you actually said a threshold of 1,800 was what you were comfortable on, and then you can move on to the next apartment. So you can always think about housing and rents. Another one that we see is rental increases annually. Sometimes if you've been a good tenant and you get a rent increase notice, you can go back to that property manager or that landlord and say, hey, I've been a good tenant for 2 years, and this is a pretty extreme price hike. Could you negotiate it down to maybe $50, what you did last year, what it was before, what we see in the current market for other apartments you found? And quite often, you'll see that they might match that or at least do a rent increase that's not as extreme as they would have had originally. Free gifts. So this is a really fun one. I was at an unnamed luxury store. I told them I wouldn't say who they were in this example, but I went to get a gift engraved, and the store, unfortunately, they messed up the engraving. It wasn't anything really outrageous, but you know, they added maybe let's say another punctuation mark that shouldn't have been there, and they said as compensation that they could go back, actually erase the engraving and then do it again. But I was already at the store. I had waited for the engraving. And I said, you know what? What if I just go ahead and take it as is now, but you throw in a gift card for my next purchase? And they actually came back and said, we can't give you a gift card due to store policy, but we can give you this free candle. And it was actually a very expensive candle. It was about $75. But I said, you know what? I'll go ahead and I'll take the candle. So even though I went in and then I was just going to pick up this gift, I was actually able to get another free gift of a free candle. So as you can see through these examples, there are a ton of things you can negotiate. And when asked the question, what can you negotiate? I would argue everything. Now let's jump into some negotiation tips. This one, the first tip, is the most important one. Be prepared and do your research. If you go into a negotiation blind, you're going to already set yourself up to fail. The number one thing you can do is be prepared going into it. If it is a job offer, expectation is you would have already researched what other positions of this same type and market in this industry currently make. There's a range, right? You've already researched what company benefits are through their website, through things like Glassdoor, PayScale. You've already come into, say, an internet bill negotiation. You know what other internet providers are researching, or excuse me, what internet providers are charging. If you're going into a housing negotiation, you already know what other apartments in the area cost. So this is the most important one, is any negotiation you come into, be prepared and do your homework. Tip number 2, have a reservation point. So what this means is that this is the bare minimum that you'll accept. If it's a job offer, maybe you make $75,000 now and you're hoping to increase your salary. But if it's the dream job and you're switching careers, maybe you say like, I'm okay taking a pay cut. However, you need to know what is that minimum that you're willing to accept. If you're on the other side, right, maybe you're a consultant and you're looking at hourly rates or a per project rate. You have a minimum that you're willing to get from other people, but then you also have a maximum that you're willing to spend for whatever it is you want to buy. So this is very important to have a reservation point so you can go in and say, this is the minimum I'm willing to accept, or the flip side, this is the maximum that I'm willing to pay. If you have that mentality, then you go into negotiation and you have your minimums and maximums, then you're less likely to go outside of that range. Tip number 3, figure out your BATNA. This is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. So when two parties come into negotiation, ideally you want to be able to come out and work with each other and you have an agreement. However, this isn't always the case. So your BATNA is your best alternative. If you are looking for a job and you can't get this to the minimum you want, it's not working out with the employer, your BATNA is the alternative. So this could be staying at your current job, right? This is your walk away. If you're with let's say a credit card company, right? Maybe you don't want that credit card to pay the annual fee and they're not willing to waive it or do what you want, then maybe you downgrade to a credit card that doesn't have an annual fee, right? So this is your alternative and your walk away. And this is very important to have because this is power, right? Because you go into negotiation and assuming both parties go in with good faith, you want to work with each other. But if you're not able to satisfy each other in that negotiation, then it's okay to walk away. And having a walk away is very powerful. So always come in with a BATNA. And if things don't work out, no need to stress over the negotiation. Don't get in an argument. You can always walk away. Now, you've seen these 3 tips I've given you. We haven't even hit the negotiations yet. All this comes into is preparation, preparation, preparation. So in your negotiations, the big tip I can give you is to pose questions. You came in with an understanding of what you want, but it's so important to figure out what the other person wants. Again, we're trying to go into good faith with each other. So it's about learning about what the other person needs. So in a case like this, I've often had clients get asked by a recruiter, by the HR person, by the hiring manager, what salary are you looking to make? So for you, if you have no idea about the salary range or you just want to get more information, a good question to pose back is, what is the budgeted range for this position for your company? Or you could say it another way, what do you consider the market value for this position? So then you pose a question back to them, and then you're just gathering information, and then they'll give you a range. Hopefully it's the same range that you had in your mind. And then that gives you information that you can utilize later on in the negotiations. So posing questions is very, very important. Again, you could ask that credit card company, oh, for other clients, do you have any other options if they're not interested in paying the annual fee, right? Do you have, other special promotions since I've been a really good client of yours for so many years? Posing questions is really good. And just think about it this way, is your information gathering. As you did your own homework by yourself on a computer, talking to others, now you have more research during the negotiation to do. So posing questions is a very powerful tool to get you information for what you want. Tip number 5, make the first offer. So sometimes do this, sometimes not. So this is what we alluded to in negotiation myths, and this is what is called anchoring. So typically, whoever makes the first offer, they anchor the negotiations around that. So if somebody were selling you a lamp on Craigslist or at a garage sale, and they said, it's $100, then in your mind, well, everything revolves around that negotiation, and the numbers bring closer to that $100. So you might say, oh, well, I will give you $90 for that, right? And you think you've gotten a good deal because that lamp was $10 off. However, if you think about it, a lamp at a garage sale or on Craigslist for $90 or $100 is still pretty expensive. But what happened is they made the first offer, so then your biases are now anchored around that. Now, what you can do is, let's say if you didn't make the first offer, you can anchor it right away. So if they said, oh, this is $100, you can come back and make your first offer and re-anchor the conversation. So you could say, actually, I was only looking to spend about $50, $55 for a lamp. Is there any way you could go down on that? And then so now you've re-anchored the conversation to be around that $50, $55 range. And then they'll actually come down and they could say something like, oh, sure, I can take it for $70. So in essence, then you got $70 for that lamp as opposed to $90 because you re-anchored the conversation. Now, I would suggest if you've done homework and you have a really good idea of a range of what you want, how much you want to pay in a bill, etc., go ahead and make that first offer for a number you're comfortable with. However, if you're kind of in that zone where you've done the research, you've done the homework, but there's a wide range of what something could be, like a specific job salary, then oftentimes let them make the first offer. And then if it's, way off the mark, then you can re-anchor it. Or perhaps oftentimes I've had clients be in the situation where they had a range, but then when they asked the employer, hey, can you actually let me know what you consider market value? What the employer said was much more than what they initially thought. So in that situation, posing questions is very important. All right. So when it comes to negotiations, it comes down to you practicing in whatever situation you are on an everyday basis. You do it every day. Think about in your home. If you have a significant other, you talk to your significant other. What do you want for dinner tonight? Or who's cooking? You negotiate who's cooking or what restaurant you're going to go to. So I highly recommend, if you want to learn more about negotiation, research it. There are great articles online. There are great books at the library that you can buy, particularly for career resources. I've written down some of my favorite. So if you're looking for things like benefits or compensation, Glassdoor, PayScale, and LinkedIn are great areas where you can really get salaries. The caveat I will have to say is things like Glassdoor, pay particular attention to because it's been around for so long. Somebody may have been in a position and 5 years ago, they inputted in their salary. Well, as time goes, inflation comes along. So that 5 year ago salary might be a little outdated. So I would actually err on the side of, places like Glassdoor that may be on the lower end. So just keep that in mind. Otherwise, PayScale, LinkedIn can give you more up-to-date salaries. Another great way to find salary information is through recruiting agencies. Recruiters are great sources of information because they're constantly on top of the market. And if you go directly to their websites, you can actually get salary guides. So here I've listed Robert Half salary guides and Bet's compensation guides. And what they do is they'll put out a list of marketing salaries for 2022, something like that, right? And they'll actually list out the exact title, oftentimes location, and then what that average salary is at the 25% mark, 50% mark, 75% mark, and beyond. So it's actually really helpful because every year they do the research for you. So you can actually go to your position title or the position title that you're looking for and then see what that current salary is in that market. So it's very powerful. Another thing you can do is simply ask peers. Nowadays, people are very into pay transparency, helping out their friends, really discussing their salaries, right? So if you're uncomfortable doing this and discussing directly with your peers, something you can do is say to somebody, hey, I'm looking at marketing jobs. The position requires about like 5 to 7 years of experience, marketing or business degree. This is what it entails. What do you expect a salary range to be for this position? So instead of them actually giving their own salary, they could say, oh, well, I would expect this position to be this much, right? You can go and also ask people, hey, I'm really interested in, switching careers. Can you tell me, do you make over this amount or under this amount to help me figure out like where I should be in my own journey, right? So oftentimes people may not be comfortable giving their exact salary, but they can tell you if they make over a certain amount or under a certain amount. And also, if you just focus it on the position and then tell them, all right, well, I'm looking for this kind of position. This person and candidate has this many years experience. What do you think a salary should be? Typically, people are more than willing to give you their opinion. All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed our negotiation presentation today and learned some tips. Again, I'm Christina Wynn from Dream Job Pursuit. If you are in need of negotiation helps or general want to do some job hunting, contact us at dreamjobpursuit.com. Thanks.